Coming up on today's show, Libby and Cal are a folk music duo based out of Ottawa, Canada. They recently released an album that tries to subvert traditional narratives about love and lust, entitled, If You've Given Up on Love, Then Let's Call It Something Else. Welcome to Loving Without Boundaries, where we hear inspiring stories, share actionable advice, and talk about the challenges and the joys of ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. I'm your host, Kitty Shambliss. Coming up after the break, my conversation with Libby and Cal.
Are you bored with dick pics? Do random hookups and empty chats kill your vibe? Tired of being catfished or wasting time with messages from faceless profiles? Then you need to get Monogamish, a new dating app designed for singles and couples of all genders and sexualities, looking for dates, mates, and everything in between. Access exclusive matchmaking events, workshops with dating and sexuality gurus, and exclusive offers so hot you'll just have to see for yourself. Download Monogamish for free from Google Play or the Apple App Store. Monogamish. Explore fluid relationships.
Welcome back to the Loving Without Boundaries podcast, where I am really super excited to be speaking with fellow musicians, Libby and Cal. And I think we're going to have a beautiful, interesting conversation that I bet will have many twists and turns. So welcome to the show, and thank you for reaching out to come on and share your work with us.
Oh, thanks for having us.
It's wonderful. Beautiful. And I'd love to just give you a moment, both of you, to introduce yourselves in your own words in a way that feels good to you, to let our listeners get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Go ahead.
I mean, we together are a musical duo based out of Ottawa, Canada. Folk music, but individually, I don't know, I'm Libby, and I don't have too much to say about myself, frankly. I don't know. Well, I'm a songwriter. I like to make music. I like to write about different kinds of love and things that are underrepresented out there.
Mm.
And I'm Cal Schreiner. I'm an import from Scotland. I was born overseas and live in Canada now. And I have done a number of things in my life. Job-wise, music has always been the glue that has held me together in all sorts of times. And it's great fun to have met Libby and do some musical adventures together.
Lovely. I'm actually, that's beautiful just to get to know both of you and your backgrounds a little bit more. I'm almost surprised to hear that you're from Scotland. I can barely detect an accent.
Well, once I've had a drink or two, it becomes a lot stronger.
I feel the same way about my Philadelphia accent when when I'm around my Philadelphia friends and I'm drinking, it definitely comes out more. So I can understand that. And I'm curious, when I first went to Europe, when I was in college, I went to London and Scotland, and I was in Arbroath, Scotland, Glasgow, and Isle of Skye. I'm curious, and been to Edinburgh, where I have some really good friends. May I ask where in Scotland you're from?
I was born in Glasgow. I moved to Stirling when I was kind of in my teen years, and then I went to school there and worked there. So I consider Stirling sort of my home more than Glasgow. For those who don't know where Stirling is, you can imagine Glasgow and Edinburgh being opposite sides of the country. Stirling is a sort of the third point, roughly kind of midway above in a triangle. But it's a much nicer city than Edinburgh. So.
Little plug.
Well, the Glasgow people say the best thing to come out of Edinburgh is the Glasgow train. So I'm sure Edinburgh people say the same thing about Glasgow. So.
That is funny. How interesting. Well, lovely. Well, I'm excited to get to know you better. And I always enjoy hearing the story of each of your light bulb moments. The way I describe that is when you're maybe in your younger years, whether that was in school or maybe in your young 20s or wherever it was for you, was there a particular moment or a series of moments when you knew that you may be coloring outside of the lines of heteronormative monogamy, or maybe you weren't like the other people that were some of your friends? Like, what was that moment for either of you? And it's always a fun question because I hardly ever get the same answer twice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I come from a queer family origin. So, these ideas weren't completely foreign to me. I remember we had some writer friends who were lesbians, but they also had a gay man living with them for a while, and they had children together. And so that was kind of an interesting idea for me. And there were polyamorous relationships in their books as well. Like I said, they were authors. And so that was probably my earliest exposure to the idea. And little things too, like at camp, I can remember there was a girl who had a boyfriend back home, but then she had her camp boyfriend, and they all knew about this and they had an arrangement. It was okay. So I was pretty lucky to be exposed to many ideas as a child and a teenager.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So it just felt for you, and that I've never heard somebody tell me that before. So for you, it just felt very natural. Like you were already exposed to, there's many different ways maybe to show up in the world with your sexuality or how you're in relationships. Is that right?
Yeah. My parents had a lot of interesting friends, and I always thought they were much more interesting than my parents, of course. And we had a lot of interesting books around the house too. My parents are monogamous. So that wasn't really a thing that I felt comfortable talking about with them. But the idea that I could be bisexual was nothing out of the ordinary. And, later on, I was exposed to the book, The Ethical Slut, in my later teens. So that was another kind of a light bulb moment where I thought, something to think about. It didn't immediately resonate with me. But I had another of my parents' friends at the time was non-monogamous, and she was super cool. So I talked about it with her and came to my own way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. So it sounds like, we'll talk about some of the challenges, but it sounds like you were raised in kind of an open environment where you were able to maybe explore, possibly without a lot of shame or guilt. That's sometimes that people might have. You were able to just kind of be a little bit more free thinking about it. Is that how you would describe it?
I was free thinking. Yes. I think that is a great way of describing it. I mean, I was pretty lucky in terms of freedom of expression. It was still not something that I felt comfortable doing at school. I didn't really feel comfortable expressing my whole self there in high school. But I mean, maybe nowadays people do. I see a lot more openness in society now than when I was there, but it was still hard to be yourself in high school. It's probably hard for everybody even now, but
okay. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. So, and including that, even though it was in a place where you could explore, there's still, of course, your schoolmates and other people that are even outside of your kind of immediate family or inner circle, where there is still maybe a stigma or a lack of understanding that you had to still navigate. Thank you for sharing that. How about for you, Cal? What was your light bulb moment or moments?
It's strange because I had a light bulb moment, but I didn't realize it for about 40 years. if that makes sense. When I grew up in a fairly conservative, small C, conservative kind of area, where everything was pretty much one way of doing things. It was the standard Scottish family, part one. It never felt exactly comfortable to me, the idea of one person being forever. There was something about it and I had no vocabulary to explain it, but it never felt right to me that I should devote myself only to one person when I'm also attracted to somebody else. We were told, well, you can't do that. And so I was kind of repressing that for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. I got married. I was married for about 15 years and then I had an affair, which ended my marriage. Mm. And it was during the affair that I also met somebody else who had knowledge of even the term polyamory, which is like, what? There's a thing that actually exists. So that was one light bulb moment. But then I realized that the real light bulb moment was way, way back, and probably when I was 12 or 13 years old. We had a neighbor across the hedge, and we would kind of hang out, and she had a friend, and the three of us would just, take turns sort of kissing all the time, and it felt completely and utterly normal. Mm-hmm. To me, mm-hmm. although, to the society at large, it would be completely abnormal. So, there was something way back in my life that was telling me, hey, this is quite normal, but there was nothing there at the time that would let me, explore that. So I've had two light bulb moments, but one of them I only realized many, many, many years later.
That's fascinating. And again, never heard that story before. So that's why I love this question. So let me see if I'm getting this right. So when you were young, you had that experience where you were kissing more than one person together with consent. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like, wow, this feels like as normal as eating peanut butter and jelly or whatever.
Absolutely.
Could you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, where I grew up, you can't know that.
Yeah, exactly. Or bananas and peanut butters. Where my friends,
one topping only.
Exactly. And I really want to honor you vulnerably sharing too that you were married for 15 years, had an affair, and I'm a former cheater, so there's no judgment. I've been down that road that ended the marriage. And so if you would tell me just a little bit more about when you learned the word polyamory. And I had the same experience, by the way. For me, it was in the Ethical Slut book. I didn't mm-hmm. know the word until I read the Ethical Slut, and I was about, I think, 37, 38 years old at that point. So if you would just a little bit more about that, Cal, because I think that's very interesting. Right. Like what stage of your life were you at, maybe?
Oh gosh. How old would I be? Older than I would like to have been. It was probably in my early 50s, maybe late 40s. The person that I introduced me to the concept, she had been around pagan festivals in her youth and had been exposed to all sorts of different ideas. And she told me that this thing actually existed. We talked about it. We talked about it with the person who I was having the affair with also, to see if they were interested in exploring that. And initially they had said yes. But later on, they sort of said no before anything really developed. So again, we sat on it for a couple of years without ever taking any further. And then when that affair relationship finally broke up, then I was sort of free to explore it with kind of with a partner who's still a partner, my first poly partner. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we started exploring things, and bought the Ethical Slut and kind of read it. And she's very, very interested in the kind of the psychology of polyamory and so on. Mm-hmm. So it's been a great learning journey. We've been sort of learning it together and kind of learning the difficulties and the joys, because there's a lot to it, and it's not as easy as it necessarily you would think it is. So, or it should. Mm-hmm. Be, so.
You were her first poly partner as well.
I was her first poly partner also. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. And you made a beautiful segue into my next question, which is you commented on there are difficulties and there are joys. For both of you, what would you say were some of the biggest difficulties or challenges maybe in the beginning stages of exploring polyamory and consensual non-monogamy, or stepping into your truth, whatever that is for you? And maybe how did you either navigate through it, overcome it, and whatever you'd like to share there?
I can go first if you like.
Yes, please.
One of the great difficulties for me is expressing feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Again, growing up in Scotland, you're taught to hide your feelings. Those are things that you don't share with anybody, and to talk about how you actually feel about things, and to also be able to listen to somebody else talking about their feelings and how you are influencing them, or how you are impinging on their feelings, or making them feel great, or those are hard conversations to have cold turkey. I mean, it's a learning experience for me, both to be able to express how I feel, and that's an ongoing project with me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was difficulty one. Difficulty two was the absolute terror of saying to a partner, "Hey, I find that person really attractive. I want to spend more time with that other person." That's a terrifying thing to do, coming from monogamous, background, because you immediately think, I'm doing something wrong. They're going to hate me. It's going to blow up into something dreadful. And the most wonderful thing, one of the joys is, the most wonderful thing is when your partner says, "Wow, yeah, that's great. Tell me about it." Or "Wow, they're hot," or whatever it happens to be, but they're supportive and they're excited and they're happy. Like, that is, it's mind blowing. So
that's awesome. And I appreciate hearing that today, because one of my partners is leaving tomorrow to go spend time with new partner A, and then long-term partner B, like back to back. So it's great. It's great to hear that, about the joys of that as well, and how that can be received in such a beautiful way. And it's kind of like working as a team to work on those skills to be able to do that. Thank you for that. Anything else you wanted to share there, Cal?
No, I have verbal diarrhea, so I tend to. I will let Libby.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, at the beginning, some of the difficulties for me would have been low self-esteem. Certainly, like, I didn't think that I was a lovable person, and I thought that if one person loved me, that ought to be good enough for my whole life. In a sense, I didn't think that I would be able to find other partners. Also, it's I'm a bit conflict avoidant. So I really had to work through that, because I'm quick to interpret something as a conflict, even if it's actually just stating a boundary or having good communication, right? Sometimes you just need to talk about the hard things, and polyamory has forced me to do that and to discover my own boundaries. And I mean, and that's one of the joys too, right? Is I am discovering my own boundaries, my own needs, and finding confidence in myself.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I think I want to honor you for just how vulnerably that you were sharing there. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners can identify with that, identify with those kind of core beliefs that many of us might have, like I'm not lovable or I'm not worthy. And also kind of the discovery that I think gets highlighted with polyamory of, oh, wait, I need to work on my boundaries and I need to figure out what my needs are. It can just kind of shine a huge light on that area of growth that we may not be as cognizant of, I think, when we're in a traditional monogamous relationship. So thanks for sharing that. And just maybe anything you might want to add there, Libby, about how would you say you navigated through that? Was it just kind of like practice and conditioning, or What helped you maybe?
Oh, that's a good question. Stalling for time here, yeah. What helped me? I really don't know. I think a lot of it is just I've been doing polyamory for 20 years and making some mistakes along the way, but nothing like crash and burn. Like it's been a pretty good journey, to be honest. I think I've met a lot of good people, and I've met people who are more experienced than me, and they've helped to guide me.
That's awesome. So what I'm hearing from that is it's partly just years in the saddle, like, and just gaining confidence from just, going at it. And I love just hearing that you've got like an emotional support system and people that you can talk about it with. But so having that sense of community is really beautiful.
It is. Yeah. Community is key. And I think listening and being open to observing what other people are doing and just hearing how other people do things has been really, really important.
That's awesome. So I'd love to ask you both, like, where would you say you are now, first currently on your consensual non-monogamous polyamorous journey, and then we can kind of segue that into your work, your musical journey as well.
So, well, I currently enjoy 3 partners, which is I think the limit for me in terms of time and emotional kind of commitment abilities. And each partner is very different, and they have wonderful strengths, and it's a lovely situation to be. I feel very, very fortunate, but I'm also very, very thankful that I've met people like this at this time of my life. I wish that I had this knowledge when I was a teenager, but I'm very happy to have it now, but know that it is a real work in progress.
Absolutely, yeah. And just when you say it's a work in progress, so you've had the 3 different partners, and so it's been just a journey of discovery and growth. And I love hearing, just understanding that it's a journey that just keeps on building upon itself. Is that how you would describe it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's very much a learning process for me, and for my partners. Certainly for the other 2 partners, they're new that this is the first time they've been involved in polyamory, so there's a lot of lessons to be learned. Communication kind of stuff is key, and like I say, that's my big work in progress. And making sure that everybody feels respected and has adequate time, and all those balancing things that are not particular to polyamory, but very much important in polyamory. To make sure that each partner feels valued, and an essential part of the makeup of the person. So
that was beautiful. I want to highlight that having each partner, whatever the number is, and for you it's 3, feel valued, feel respected, feel special in your life, and that it's like this balancing act. Yeah, that's always a learning experience too. Also, especially as we're evolving and growing and changing. Yeah, love that. How about for you, Libby? Where would you describe where you are now on that journey?
I also have 3 partners. It seems like a good number for me. And in terms of being non-monogamous, I literally can't imagine it any other way. And I mean that because I've never had a monogamous relationship in my life. It's something that I just can't fathom and hope never really to do. Like, there have been periods of monogamy, certainly, but I have it any other way. It's the way I am.
Like kind of part of your DNA. Yeah.
I don't know if it's nature or nurture. I'm not getting into that.
Sure.
It's certainly the right choice for me. Sometimes I worry, like, this is great for me, but are my partners satisfied? I guess that would be my main concern. It's like, am I doing right by them? Like, sure, I'm happy to have this love coming at me. Am I able to give back the right amount?
Awesome. Well, it's a journey, and I think we're all learning and growing. So, and especially if you've been practicing it for as many years as you have, I'm sure that you're doing a fine job and learning more skills that you're building on top of. And by being here on our podcast, both of you are helping normalize the conversation and also being great role models in a beautiful way. Also saying like, hey, it's not like we've got it all figured out. We're still learning and we're still growing and we're on the journey. And that, to me, that says a lot about the two of you as human beings. So thank you for sharing so vulnerably here. And with that, I'd love to understand, tell me more about how you translated even some of the challenges and the joy and the difficulties. What inspired you maybe to start creating music out of that?
Yeah, I mean, thank you first off for describing us as role models. And I think that is important to me. I'm not sure that I'm the best role model in the world, of course. I mean, who is? But part of that is I wanted to be open about it because I am in a place to do so. I'm confident enough in myself now at this stage of my life, and I have a platform. I'm writing songs. I can write about this. And after, like I said, after about 20 years of doing this, I almost feel like it's time to give back in a way, to say like, well, if I can do this, you can do this. And so it's a fairly recent development that I have felt it important to be more open about non-monogamy in my songs. It's not something that I go about doing overly consciously. I just don't want to censor that part of my life in my songwriting.
I love that. So for you, it's, from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying, it's part of you living your most authentic life, to not pretend that part of your life isn't there, especially when it's been part of your framework for 2 decades. So to be able to kind of just speak openly about it.
Yeah, I think that having more role models around is a good thing. I know that as a kid, I felt pretty alone, growing up in a queer family, like I said, and now I see that there are so many role models around, and that kids these days are a lot. Kids these days, I really just said that. But they have a lot more role models, and I think it's great. And I kind of am jealous. So I guess I should be one, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm in my 50s, and yeah, when I was growing up, I grew up in a Catholic setting, went to Catholic school, and I had no idea, kind of like you, Cal, I had no idea that open relationships were available to me, that polyamory was even a thing. And I guess when I was a kid, the word hadn't even actually been coined yet, so to speak. But I speak around the country, and the talk I gave that had the most impact for me was I spoke at a college to their LGBTQ plus community about living their most authentic lives, including if that was consensual non-monogamy. And when I gave that talk, I was almost in tears, because I just thought, gosh, I wish somebody came to my college and had given me this very talk that I'm giving to these kids. And it's also such an honor to be able to be the person speaking to them. So I couldn't agree more. I in a cute way, am kind of envious of young people today that they get to have this breadth of resources and podcasts and books that we didn't have at that time. Would have saved me a lot of suffering.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's great to be able to give back now. So again, thank you for having this conversation with me. How about for you, Cal? What is it about translating what you've learned into music that's meaningful for you?
Well, it's been very interesting for me because Libby has been doing songs for years and years and years. About 5 years ago or so, we were working on a a recording project, and I kept on singing harmonies to the songs that she was singing as we were recording them. And eventually she reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to just do some stuff?" So I started out singing on songs that were not necessarily about kind of polyamory. They were introspective songs and so on. But as we played together and as we become, I think, quite comfortable with the idea of us being publicly seen as polyamorous, that some of the songs have also gone that way, and some of them are now overtly sort of polyamorous, but there are also songs that are, if you're polyamorous, you will get this, but if you're not, you'll get something else. So there's sort of other songs that are not quite as explicit, but if you know, you know. And where that is going, who knows? But we are sort of developing a style that really resonates with people, both in terms of the music, but how we deliver the music. That we have a clutch of songs that are sort of humorous, but also will take roles on stage, will bicker, in a song, and or will compare histories in a song as a sort of a conversation. And people seem to really resonate with the fact that we're a couple on stage. And we have fun with that too, because when you go to see two people performing, especially a man and a woman, you sort of assume that they're together, whereas that's not always the case at all. And we weren't for the first kind of couple of years that we worked on stuff. So we always sort of get a question, well, are you two a couple? And we sort of don't have a pat answer for that. And it's very funny because my other two partners are also musicians. I also play with them. So, and sometimes we all play together at the same places.
Wow.
And so then people are who?
If there's one man.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah.
So we all have fun with that. It's kind of fun to see what people's assumptions are. But I really love that Libby's songwriting is I think great, and I love to see what I can add to that, both in terms of sort of personality, but also harmony and so on. So it's sort of it's a very important part of our relationship. We were discussing a while back. It's like, well, what happens if we break up? Are we gonna still do the music? And it's like, well, yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's what brought us together. So.
Oh, that's neat.
In a polyamorous, something I guess it's hard to predict, but in a polyamorous situation, those things are possible because you can have a relationship with somebody, a very intense, meaningful relationship that isn't necessarily sexual. And that, to me, is also part of kind of polyamory, that you share a particular thing, an aspect of your life very deeply with somebody. It doesn't have to be romantic. So I think those are good portents for the future. So
that's beautiful. And a whole slew of questions came up for me. So one is that we didn't really touch on is, how long have the two of you been together?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And it sounds like, so you've been playing music as well since you said that brought you together for a lot of those 3 years, it sounds like.
Well, 4 or 5.
4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it was the music first.
Music first, yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
She captured me with her lyrics.
Oh, that's amazing. So that's really cool. And I'd love to hear too. Oh, well, one thing we haven't talked about is what instruments do you play? I know obviously you're doing harmonies there, Cal, but tell me a little bit more about your musical skills that you each are bringing to the table.
Well, Libby plays.
I play auto harp. A little sheepishly, but I'm actually getting better at it. And I sing, and I write songs. So that's my main. I don't know if there's a front person in our duo, but
Not really.
No.
I play a 12-string guitar, which with the auto harp has 36 strings. So there's a lot of tuning involved. Two of them, but it's quite an interesting sound. The sound engineers look at the two instruments and think, well, it's exactly the same sounds coming out of them, same kind of harmonics and so on, but they can always seem to get quite a range of sound out of it. But it's definitely a unique combination. And yeah, so it's the two instruments and the two voices, and that's pretty much
neat. And then you mentioned that I think it was you, Cal, your other two partners also are musicians. What do they play? I'm out of curiosity.
One plays fiddle and cello and sings, and the other sings, but is also learning the hurdy-gurdy and the nickel harpa.
I don't even know what those are. That's fascinating.
So they're folk instruments. One's from the nickel harpa is from Sweden. It's like a fiddle that you play down the way, and the hurdy-gurdy is a wind-up instrument. It's got a handle on it, and it's sort of like this, makes a noise sort of like a violin being tortured. Only in the nicest way.
In a nice way.
Yeah. Tickled more than tortured, maybe. So, but
that is fascinating.
Yeah.
Very cool. And for our listeners, we were talking before we started recording, but I also am a musician and a singer. I play a regular acoustic guitar that I took lessons from the age of 8 to 13. And my running joke is I stopped taking lessons because I discovered boys at that time when I was going through puberty. But I still know how to play piano. But a guitar. But I am learning to play piano just for fun when I have time, which is not much of these days, but I hope to have more. And I love to sing. So I sang in bands for 18 years, starting out first as the backup singer in a blues band. But then I ended up becoming mainly the front singer in 2 different cover bands. So I was probably doing about 75% of the songs. And because my voice is lower, they were cover bands. So I would sometimes do female songs if it was more like Melissa Etheridge or Pat Benatar, kind of like deeper sounds. And then a lot of male songs, just because my range is lower. I don't have that kind of Carrie Underwood kind of range,
Very cool.
Yeah. And then I would also do like just simple percussion, like tambourine, shaky egg, things like that. But music fascinates me. So I can't wait to listen and dive into some of your music. But for our listeners, even if you just give us a taste in terms of maybe like the titles of some different songs, what are some titles that would resonate with our listeners that might intrigue them to go check out your music?
Yeah, our latest album, the title is If You've Given Up on Love, Then Let's Call It Something Else. So, you don't need to call it love necessarily. If you're into love, that's great. But sometimes you just need to consciously define what your relationship is going to be, right? And, maybe there's past trauma, whatever, the L word is problematic for you. You can still have a great relationship, right? That's kind of what that's about.
Free Agents.
Free Agents is the name of one of our songs. Yeah. That's kind of what it sounds like, all being the same person, but choosing people.
Yeah. Choosing relationships by following your heart. So.
I love that. That's a beautiful concept.
We set out to have a kind of a story arc in the latest release, looking at problems in relationships and difficulties, and then somebody breaking free really and finding different ways of approaching relationships. So some of the early songs are looking at the division of labor in the household, and how it seems that somebody, a man fixing the toilet holder, is demanding adulation for that, where the poor mother has been looking after the kids all day and cooking and cleaning and whatever, not receiving any kind of acknowledgement for it at all. So those sorts of themes. And then there's a few little funny songs in there too.
Yeah, so modern body song.
Yeah. Body as in BAWDY. where we almost sound like it's a root song, but it's not. And so by the end of it, we are free of the shackles of monogamy, and you can arrange your life the way you want it to be. So that's the sort of the story arc of it.
That's awesome. Well, I'm super excited to listen to it, and I just want to stop for a moment and just say, thank you for the work that you're doing. It sounds amazing. So who would you say might be your target audience, if you will, or people that might really resonate with your music, or maybe who has been resonating with your music?
Yeah, I find it really difficult to predict, actually. Like, we've done a lot of open mics, which has brought us to a lot of different places. So, we might do a very folky place, or we might do a bar where it's kind of loud, and we'll tailor our material to each circumstance. But age-wise, I feel like there have been, 20-year-olds and there have been 80-year-olds, and they both have come up to us and said, hey, that really resonates with me. So I'm not sure if it's an age thing. I'm not quite sure what it's all about. Free thinkers.
Free thinkers for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Free thinkers.
Yeah, people who aren't scared to kind of test the limits of societal pressures. That really does seem to resonate with those folks. Also, I mean, I sort of make a joke of a lot of music, especially popular music, has terrible themes in it. I mean, it's so restricting, verging on the violent. Even the Beatles, the first 4 albums, if you listen to them through a polyamory lens, you'll think, what? No. I'd rather see a dead little girl than to be with another man. I'd be like, come on.
Yeah.
And people are listening to this stuff. It's quite discouraging to hear what these same things being regurgitated generation after generation. So
now it's like, I'm kissing my ex-best friend's ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
That song is so funny.
Well, it doesn't sort of prove it there, I suppose. But and he knows about it would be a better thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to rework a whole pile of these really famous, popular songs, but stop and write another verse and say, well, you could actually figure this out if,
Yeah, that's amazing. That would be, I hadn't thought of that. Like, what if there was a Weird Al Yankovic type person who changes all the lyrics from like toxic monogamy into expansive connections and polyamory? That would be a lot of fun.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I would take Weird Al and see if he can do that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Very cool. So
I like the idea of taking those ideas, though, and making our own songs. Like, it doesn't need to be a Weird Al parody of the song.
Right.
You can listen to those old songs, or not even old songs, but popular songs, and say, like, what is wrong with this picture? How can we turn this around and write our own version?
That's awesome. I love that. So beautiful. So any other, how can people, or I should say with this, any other parting thoughts in terms of any message that you'd like to leave our listeners with? And then we'll also talk about where they can find you and your work.
Don't be afraid to test things. Don't be afraid to communicate. If you need to expand your horizons, don't be afraid to say that to somebody. And it may be that the relationship that you have is not going to be a fit for that. But I think it's a lot worse to live under a sentence that you impose yourself when there is a way to unlock the door. So don't be afraid to do it. It takes a lot of work and a lot of respect for people, but it can be incredibly rewarding.
Thank you. That was a beautiful message to leave folks with. How about for you, Libby?
I think I would just piggyback on that and say, you're probably not as much of a weirdo as you think you are. Why should you be brave enough to communicate and talk about these feelings? Because lots of people have them, and it's what you decide to do about them that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're not the only one to feel this way. And it's quite likely that your partner has felt this way at some point in their life too. I think it's a really common feeling to want to open things up or change something. I mean, even if it's just, making a change of some other kind.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Very beautiful. Well, I've loved getting to know both of you. I'm so excited about the work that you're doing. Where can people find you and your work?
I guess if you want, you can look on Spotify. No artist ever recommends Spotify, right? But we are on Spotify as Libby and Cal. But, also on Bandcamp, or I have a website under the name Libby Hortop, HORTOP.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, we will put links to that on the show notes for our podcast episode and make sure that people know where to find your work. So know that you have my full support. I am cheering you both on 100% as a fellow musician, as a fellow polyamorous, and as a fellow educator and activist for people living their lives in a way that works for them, even if they are coloring outside the lines of heteronormative monogamy. So I am delighted for everything that you're doing and hope that you continue for many, many years to come. And I'm excited to listen to your songs and share it with our community. So thank you.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you heard, are struggling with some aspect of your relationships, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit to work with me as your relationship coach, here's what I invite you to do next. Head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That's lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply, and book a call to speak with me. I'll get on the phone with you for about 45 minutes, and we'll get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, exactly what's not working well in your relationships right now. Number 2, ideally where you'd like to be and what might be getting in the way. And number 3, the exact strategy to get you there, helping to close that gap. Remember, creating healthy, open relationships does not typically happen by itself. Many often need expert guidance to make it happen. We've helped clients all over the world to feel safe, happy, and secure in open relationships, while not losing their mind or their cherished partners. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. I'm Kitty Chambliss, and let's talk soon.